Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen, Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil mursaleen, Khatam al-Anbiya wa rahmatul lil alameen, Sayyidina wa Habibina wa Shafi'ina wa Mawlana Muhammad wa alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Amma ba'd, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's not a very good start. You're all sleeping already. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. That's a bit better. You're meant to sleep after I've spoken or while I'm speaking, not beforehand. So wake yourselves up now. Okay. To begin with, I want to thank the Islamic Society from Cardiff University for inviting me tonight to talk on this very interesting subject. And also I thank them for their creativity, because normally I just do a talk called Marriage in Islam. But they came up with the innovative and creative title of When Adam Met Eve. There's no mention of Adam alayhi salam or Amma Hawa in the talk, but it's very creative anyway, so jazakallah khair to them for that. Also, before I begin, if you're wondering why I'm not stood behind this, it's because I'm very short and nobody will see me. So you'll just see a voice coming over from the top of the computer. Okay. Now this topic of marriage in Islam, it's an enormous topic. It's a very, very popular topic. It's a very controversial topic. It's a very exciting topic, as you can see by all of the young people that are here. Everybody wants to know about marriage in Islam. This is the buzzword on everybody's mouths at the moment. So before we begin, can I just have a show of hands? Hands up all those who are married. Very few. Hands up all those who want to be married. Alhamdulillah. Hands up anyone who doesn't want to be married. Alhamdulillah. Okay, that's a good sign. Oh, one brother at the top doesn't want. He's probably been married before and he's doesn't want to go any further. Okay, as I mentioned, it is an absolutely enormous topic. I could never ever do it any justice in the short time I have before you. So what I'm going to try and do today is just give you a synopsis. Normally this would be taught as a course. Or if you come for marriage guidance counselling or nasiha, it would take weeks and weeks to go through all of the various subject matters of marriage. So what I'm going to try and give you today is a picture. Just a general picture. We're going to begin, inshallah, by looking at how Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants marriage to be for us. How He instituted marriage. What He requires from us. How Islam views marriage should be. Then, inshallah, we will go on very briefly to look at how we should get married. And I see most of you aren't married, so that's probably when you're all going to wake up. How do we get married? What do we look for? What are the criteria? What are the methods towards getting married? After which we'll look at how we stay married. And believe me, brothers and sisters in Islam, this today is one of the most important factors. Believe me, I can tell you because I deal with this area, marriage has become one of the greatest fitnas in our communities today. Not just in the UK, but throughout our ummah. The numbers of divorces in Islam are enormous now. There was a time where we were proud that we have very small figures of divorce and marriage breakdown within Muslim communities. Now we are overtaking the indigenous population in the number of divorces. A brother just mentioned to me there was a program on TV about the UK Sharia Council, and all that they were dealing with, 90%, they're known to me, they're friends of mine, 90% of what the Sharia Council across the UK are dealing with is marriage breakdown. So these are enormous problems. So we're going to look at how we stay married, inshallah. And then finally, if time permits and Allah gives us tawfiq, we will look at some of the problems. But I know that there's going to be plenty of time for question and answer, and I'm sure that's when most of the discussion will take place. Okay, so let's begin. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala want from us in marriage? What is the Islamic view of marriage? We just saw on the screen a series of ayat being translated and beautifully recited. And one of them is the key to marriage in Islam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Rum, ayah number 22, and of His signs is that He has created for you mates from your own selves, in order that you may find comfort with one another. And He planted love, mercy and kindness between your hearts. There are signs in this for those who reflect. This is the basic summation of what we are meant to be looking for in marriage. Nowadays, when you ask young people, why do you want to get married? If you ask a young brother, why do you want to get married? I can't repeat to you the answer because there are sisters present. Because young brothers don't even understand the concept. They're just hot-blooded, unfortunately. This is the fitrah Allah gave them. Sisters, because my parents tell me to do so. We should go back to the Quran. We should look at what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from us. What does He want from our marriages? But what's interesting to note before we get into the subject itself, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala himself is saying this is from his signs. It is one of the signs of Allah. Ayat. Now, when Allah talks about signs, we should take note. Allah mentions signs. And look at the way, we saw the translation. Look at what's preceding this ayah. And look at what succeeds the ayah. There are signs that Allah is talking about. Like the creation of mankind from dust. Like the creation of the heavens and the earth. Like the variation of colors and languages. Like the alternation of the night and day. Like the lightning. Like the rain. All of these are mighty signs of Allah. And we know those who study Quran and those who even have the most rudimentary understanding of the Quran, when Allah talks about His signs and He tells us to reflect, what are we meant to do? We see the creation of Allah. We see the lightning. We see the rain. We see the alternation of the night and day. We see the creation of mankind from dust. And the sign of the creation points back to what? The Creator. So His signs are for us. People who reflect, people of understanding, people who ask. We are meant to look at His signs and see the Creator. So when Allah talks about signs, we're meant to realize these are something quite significant. They're not just to be passed over. So when Allah says that marriage, this bringing together of mates, creating them from amongst one another, in order that we find comfort, and He is placing between the hearts love, mercy and kindness, this is a sign to reflect on the Creator. So it is from Allah's majesty that we should understand this sign that He is talking about. Okay, we understand then that it has a very high status in Islam. Marriage has a high status. Allah refers to it as one of His signs. Also, Allah elsewhere in the Quran mentions that this contract of marriage is a huge contract, a mighty covenant, not to be taken lightly, not to be done for the wrong reasons, not to be entered upon without thinking, without seeking guidance from Allah, without hoping that we're doing it in the way that pleases Allah. This is crucial. We shouldn't just be doing it for the sake of it. We should be doing it in a way that pleases Allah, because all of our actions as Muslims must be there done to please Allah. If we're not pleasing Allah in doing our actions, what are we doing it for? To please ourselves, to please our families, to please our communities? No. As a Muslim, what we are meant to do is seek Allah's pleasure in all that we do. Also, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam mentioned, and it's very, very famous, and we'll come to it later on. Rasulullah mentioned, when a man marries, he has fulfilled half of his religion. So let him fear Allah regarding the remaining half. Half of his religion. And as I say, we'll come to that again, inshallah, in a few moments. This is narrated by Anas ibn Malik. Islam encourages us to marry. It shields us. It protects us. It gives us what we require to fulfill half our religion. And we'll see why when we establish what marriage is meant to be in Islam, we will all understand without me even telling you why it fulfills half of your religion and why we then have to guard the other half. Okay, so we first of all see it's very important. It's a big sign. It's a huge contract. It's half of your religion. So now we've woken up and we realize this is something serious we're talking about here. It's not something to be taken lightly. But also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentions something very important. Bear in mind, Allah is Al-Hakim. When He chooses words to reveal to us, it is from His infinite wisdom. Nothing is random. Nothing is to be taken lightly. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, when you read the Quran, realize every single word that has been revealed has significance, and we should ponder upon it. He mentions that He has created mates from where? From amongst ourselves. He says that He has created for you mates from your own selves. First of all, we should understand something. From your own selves, this shows us that men and women in Islam, husband and wives, they're not opponents. There's no battle of the sexes in Islam. Nowadays, we live in a society where women are trying to get their rights and dominate men. Men are trying to dominate women. Everybody's battling with the opposite sex. There is no battle of the sexes in Islam. If they are from their own selves, it's like a union from yourself. From your own self. This means that they are complementary to one another. This means that men and women complement one another. They don't oppose one another. And if we start understanding, which we'll see again later on, the differences between men and women, we see why Allah made it so. The men have certain qualities that are complemented by the qualities that Allah has given to women, and vice versa. They are not opposing. They are not conflicting. There is no opposition. So we should take these ideals out of our head that we see around us, that we're in clash with one another, that we're battling one another. We've got to get supremacy over the other. And we understand that Rasulullah ﷺ told us in the final khutbah, very famous, and we all know it, that Rasulullah ﷺ is telling the men that your wives are your partners and committed helpers. Partners and committed helpers. They are from ourselves. They are not our enemies. They are not to be battled against. They are there to help us. They are there as our partners. And this is how we have to view marriage in Islam. Allah goes on to say, why? Why marriage? What's the purpose? He tells us it's a sign. He tells us that He created our mates from our own selves. But for what reason? In order that you may find comfort with one another. This is the key. And this is where marriages are failing now. This concept of finding comfort with one another. One of the Arab poets once wrote, and I'm not going to embarrass myself with Arabic, I'll tell you the rough translation. Man longs for woman because she is from his soul. And woman longs for man as he is her origin. That we should be finding comfort with each other because we understand we're from each other. We are from each other. So we find comfort almost with ourselves. Finding comfort with your partner in marriage is like finding comfort within your own self. So this is what one of the purposes of marriage is. In order that you may find comfort with one another. But why is it that nowadays we don't see comfort being found in marriage? We see acrimony, we see battles, we see argumentation, we see oppression, we see lack of rights, we see all of these things taking place, and that's what we'll come to at the end, because we are not adopting marriage in Islam in the way that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam commanded it to be. So finding comfort with one another is something very, very important. That when we're married, we should be finding this comfort in our marriage. We should be finding partnership. We should be finding peace, tranquility. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala goes on to say, He has planted love and kindness between your hearts. Now, there weren't many hands up that were married, but everybody knows people who are married. Do we see these things in marriage today in Islam? Do we see comfort, love, mercy, kindness? In certain cultures, if you mention the word love, they say, Astaghfirullah. Love in marriage? Don't talk like this. Love is dirty. I'm not specifying any particular cultures. I myself am from Pakistani origin, so I have the right to use that accent. So forgive me anyone who's Pakistani. I mean no disrespect. But this is what we feel. Love. Why are we embarrassed to talk about love? Allah is saying that He planted love between your hearts. Wallahi, brothers and sisters, you can't nurture love. It is for Allah to put that love between you. We love one another for the sake of Allah. Truly we do. But that nurturing of love between husband and wife comes upon nikah. This issue of love outside of marriage does not exist. That's lust. And that's longing. And very often that's just sexual desire. But this issue of love truly comes upon the conclusion of a nikah. This is where Allah puts love between the hearts. And we shouldn't be embarrassed to talk about love. Rasulullah used to talk about love with his wives. The Sahaba used to talk about love with their wives. Why are we so embarrassed? Are we such bigger men than they are that we can't talk about love? And our women, are we so embarrassed that we can't talk about love? Even though the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, the mothers of the believers, talked about love. We can discuss love. So we understand that this comfort, this kindness, this love, this mercy are the ingredients to making marriage successful. These are what make marriage very successful in Islam. And also when these are absent, marriages start to break down. Which is why I've got so many grey hairs, because of so many marriages breaking down in this day and age. Also, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes husbands and wives as garments for one another. What does your garments do? Your garment protects you. Your garment keeps you warm. Your garment makes you feel comfortable. Your garment makes you look good. Your garment hides all the sins underneath. So your garment is something very close to you. You wear it next to your body. And it gives you all these ingredients of protection, warmth, comfort, makes you look good. But again, when we see marriages in Islam, we don't see this understanding of garments even. We should be building a picture now of how Allah wants us to be in marriage. If we are truly garments for one another, we're not opposing. We're complementing. We're looking after. We're protecting. We're keeping them warm. We're keeping them comfortable. Both directions, men and women. Keeping them comfortable. We're making them look good. And I pause for a second just to mention this one. Making them look good. Nowadays, what do you see? When the brothers gather in their gatherings, inshallah not in the halaqat, but when they gather to chill out and flex or whatever young people do today, what do? Oh, my missus, she does my head in. I can't handle it. You go to the sisters' gathering. Not that I do, but from what I hear, you go to the sisters' gathering and what are they saying? Oh, my husband does this, my husband does that. If you're your garment and you're meant to make each other look good, if you're meant to protect, if you're meant to give warmth, then this isn't the concept that we should be adopting. We should be hiding what takes place behind closed doors and maintaining the sanctity of marriage. There are issues of marriage which should remain hidden, which should remain within the sanctity of the home. And if there are problems in marriage, rather than exposing them to the generality of the community, we seek nasiha through the correct channels, rather than telling all and sundry. Because what happens? You're walking down the street and some strange sister just looks at you like that. I get it a lot. Why? Because people are... I don't really. Because people are talking badly of one another. Likewise, brothers and sisters, this is not the way of Islam. I'll give you one very sincere advice. One of the shuyukh once said to me, when you give people a marriage advice, tell them something very important. The marriage is like a castle. It has very strong fortified walls and only one door in and one door out. So never let people into that door or let anything from inside that castle go out unless absolutely necessary, and then choose the right person to let in. So this is how we should understand with marriage. Unfortunately today, we let off steam to our friends, to our relatives, to our mates and our chilling partners or whatever. We let off the steam of our marriages in the wrong avenues. And this is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala requires from us. The Sharia does not support this. It supports going through the correct channels and seeking nasiha. So if we are garments, if we're there to protect, if we're meant to give comfort to one another, if we're meant to foster this love, kindness and mercy, now we can see why Rasulullah said that it completes half of your religion. Half of your religion. That's a gigantic amount. We will all, inshallah, think about completing all the fard parts of our religion. We all want to perform Hajj. We all want to fast the month of Ramadan. These are all integral parts of our deen. But do we ever even think about the enormity of our marriages? That is completing half of your religion. Why? Because if you have those qualities I just mentioned, you will be protected from so many fitna which are out there. If brothers have happy marriages, if they are happy at home, when they come through the front door, their wife is smiling, they're happy to receive them, they have a harmonious, loving, comforting, merciful, kind, garment-like relationship with their wives, then when they go in the street and they see the fitna in the society that we see, they're able to deal with it better because they have comfort back at home. Tell the believing men and the believing women to lower their gaze. If there is harmony in the house, both for men and women, when they are out in the streets and they are presented with fitna, then it's much easier to lower the gaze. Also, half your religion, why? Young brothers, I see many, many young brothers living alone as students. If you are married in a harmonious marriage, done for the sake of Allah, when it comes to getting up for tahajjud, would it not be more beautiful to get up with your wife at tahajjud? And sisters the same. Would it not be more beautiful to get up with your husband and pray tahajjud? Wake each other for fajr. Remind each other of salah. Whenever possible, to pray together. To worship Allah together. When we go to talks and lectures, to go together. What happens nowadays is that men and women are sometimes living separate lives. The man lives one life, and the woman lives one life. And never the twain shall meet. And this is not a garment. This is not comfort. Understand how incredible the relationships of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam with his wives were. Incredible. He did all the things he had to do. He did all the things necessary for a messenger of Allah to do, for a man to do, for an emir to do. But he also spent time with his families. And they spent time with him. And they shared what was taking place. There was a sharing. This is what it means to have a garment. So we should understand the picture that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is building for us of what marriage is meant to be. It sounds nice, doesn't it? This is how marriage should be. That when we're at home, we find this comfort. We have between our hearts love, mercy and kindness. All of the ingredients are in place and we enjoy it. Marriage is there to be enjoyed. It is not meant to be a fitna. It is not meant to be a trial or a tribulation. When you're with your partner, you should find all of these things. Marriage is the foundation of this Islamic society. It's the foundation of the Islamic society. Because in the absence of marriage, what happens? Men and women are interacting in bad ways, in impermissible ways. So if the sanctity of marriage is broken, nowadays what do we have? Boyfriends and girlfriends within the Muslim community. Even amongst the practicing people, we have halal friends. Oh, he's my halal friend. She's my halal friend. There is no such thing as your halal friend and your halal male friend or female friend. They don't exist. It is the foundation of the Islamic society because through marriage we build our families. Through marriage we have children in the permissible way. These children are taught in accordance with the Quran and Sunnah how to be good Muslims. And this is how the Islamic society builds and grows. Without the sanctity of marriage, this is gone. Even in the West today, what do we see? All the research is saying we should reintroduce the concept of marriage. Nobody marries today. You just have boyfriends, girlfriends, boyfriends and boyfriends, girlfriends and girlfriends, civil partners, whatever you want. What happens in this situation? Society is breaking down. People are having children left, right and centre. People are not responsible for their actions. Men are not responsible for their women, and women are not responsible towards their men. Because the sanctity of marriage has been broken. Islam builds the foundation of the Islamic community on this beautiful concept of marriage. Okay, so we've established now what marriage is meant to be in Islam, what it's meant to seek, how we're meant to live our lives in a very short way as Muslims. Now, how do we get married? This is the starting point. We've seen what we're meant to aim for. This is where marriage is meant to be. But how do we get there in the first place? How do we get married? We can't do it as though it is done in society. You're out in the pub or the club and you fancy someone and suddenly... This is not the Islamic way in any way, shape or form. There are conditions and criterion for which we should seek marriage partners. And we all know, very famously, Imam Bukhari related that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, a woman is married for four things: her wealth, her status, her beauty, and her religion. So you should marry the religious women, otherwise you will be a loser. Now, young brothers, doesn't mean go to sleep, sisters. Young brothers, when we hear that list of four, and we all know it's ingrained in our hearts, unmarried brothers, wealth, beauty, status, religion. Rasulullah is telling us, marry the ones with deen, marry the women of taqwa. Because if you don't, you're going to be losers. But when the brothers come looking for a wife, and I'm telling you from experience, the first condition, she should be pious, but she's got to be fit. Pious, pious, fit. Rasulullah is telling us, marry the religious women, the women of taqwa. Otherwise you will be losers. Why? Western psychology and Islamic psychology and our deen teaches us something. We should all understand, men and women have a different nature. If you marry for beauty alone, dear brothers, what will you find? After a few years, your wife may get a little bit older. She may put on some weight. She may get wrinkled. She may not look like that 19, 20, 25, 30, whatever year old beauty that you first married. If you're only marrying her for the beauty, that will go. And also, this is what Western psychologists teach us, that after 3 to 6 months of being with the same partner, men, and this is men, not women, because Allah gave us a different nature, men become bored. Become bored. Why? Because Allah gave us a nature. And the eyes start to wander. If only beauty is what you look for. In English they say, beauty is only skin deep. Beauty is only skin deep. This is an English phrase. And this is the truth. The physical beauty that we're seeking will be gone after 3 to 6 months. If there is nothing deeper than that in the reason that we are marrying, then that marriage will start breaking down after 3 to 6 months when the beauty becomes normalized. It's the same with everything. Men and women have the same fitrah in this respect. That when you get accustomed to something, it disappears. It starts losing its charm. If somebody loves to eat caviar, anyone love to eat caviar? No? Okay, bad example. If somebody loves to eat curry, if you eat the same curry, your favorite curry, every single night of the week, you're going to get bored of it. If there's nothing deeper. That's just a simple example to show you the fitrah that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us. So, when you're choosing a marriage partner, if beauty is your criterion, that will disappear. So Rasulullah gave us the perfect advice. That we seek taqwa. Because if you build the foundation of your marriage on taqwa, if it's piety, if it's fear of Allah, love of Allah, consciousness of Allah, desire to please Allah, then when you start your married life, both of you moving in the same direction, seeking Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala's pleasure, now the marriage will start to thrive. And then, wallahi brothers and sisters, the beauty will even increase. The beauty will even increase. Because what you find beautiful in people is momentary, which is a physical beauty. What you find beauty in people is what is inside. You don't find someone beautiful momentarily. You may find somebody beautiful from the outside. But if their akhlaq, if their adab is disgusting, you'll soon move away from them. But when somebody has a good character, they are people of taqwa, then what do we find? That we start to find people more beautiful. Even what may have appeared in inverted commas ugly to begin with, the character, the taqwa shines through. And then you find the people beautiful. So the conditions, the criterion we should be looking for, brothers, is taqwa. This is the foundation. We'll come back to what that means in a moment. Imam Tirmidhi reported that Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu said, that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam said, if someone whom you accept his deen and his akhlaq propose to you for marriage, then marry him. If you do not, there will be corruption on the earth. This is for the sisters. If a man comes to you with his deen, normally the hadith is related like this. If a man comes to you with his deen intact and you refuse him, there will be fitna on the land. And this is a stick with which sometimes fathers beat their daughters. If a man comes to you with his deen intact and you refuse him, there will be fitna. So your cousin is a good man, he prayed last week. So marry him. Understand the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam properly. Why is this translation saying deen and akhlaq? What is deen? Is deen 5 times a day prayer? No. Deen is mistranslated as religion. Deen is a way of life. If you are happy with his way of life, which includes his adab and his akhlaq. So if a man of good character, of good piety, of good deen, he's practicing. And even look at this word, practicing. SubhanAllah, brothers and sisters. Nowadays, what do we see as practicing? If he prays 5 times a day, we say he's practicing. Rather, we've made a huge mess in our communities. If we view the practicing people as those who pray 5 times a day, we're in a mess. If you're not praying 5 times a day, you may not even be Muslim. Rasulullah ﷺ said, the difference between the mu'min and the kafir is the salah. The difference between the mu'min and the kafir is the salah. It was the opinion of Umar al-Khattab, radiallahu anhu. If you missed one prayer intentionally, it takes you outside of the fold of Islam. This is not the ijma' of the ulama. The ulama say that if you leave the prayer completely, then it will take you outside of the fold of Islam. Nowadays we use this as a criterion. He prays 5 times a day, he's practicing. Rather, if he doesn't pray 5 times a day, we question if he's even a Muslim. So our conditions, our criterion for how we view practicing a man with deen intact is wrong. A man with his deen and akhlaq intact, or good deen and akhlaq, means that he's fulfilling as much as possible, physically capable of the rules and regulations Allah has laid down before us. It means his character is in line with the Quran and the Sunnah. Character. But Rasulullah said, I have not been sent except to perfect good manners. I have not been sent except to perfect good manners. So if his character is in line with the Sunnah, then we start thinking, this is somebody worth marrying. And now if this man comes, you're happy with his practice of Islam, you're happy with his adab, You're happy with his akhlaq. You're happy with the manner in which he's going to provide for you. Because that's part of his deen as well, his way of life. It is one of the rights of a woman that she should be maintained in a manner that she's accustomed to. So if the man is unable to provide, she can refuse on this basis. But if he's fulfilling all of these conditions, if he's doing all the right things, if he has these criterion, then if you refuse him, then there will be corruption in the land. And again, just as I mentioned with the brothers, the sisters have the same problem sometimes. The sisters, when they're looking, they don't just want the deen. And I know, mashallah, this would be none of the sisters here, but sisters elsewhere, sometimes they're looking for all the wrong things. He's got to look like Shah Rukh Khan. I don't even know who this guy is or what he looks like, but apparently he's really good looking. So he's got to be a millionaire. He's got to be this. He's got to be at the Hafiz of the Quran. So they're listing all these unrealistic criteria. Look at the character of the person. If you are content that he is practicing to the level that you are comfortable with and that you aspire to, if you're content with his character and the way he will provide for you and the manner in which he conducts himself, then inshallah we shouldn't refuse the brothers. We should accept this way of marrying. So these are what we should be looking for. Both parties should be looking for deen, taqwa, piety, bir. These are things we should be looking for in marriage partners. All the other things will come after us. But how do we go about finding partners? As I mentioned, it is not permissible to go wandering the streets or the campuses and checking each other out and finding who we like. Rather, we should go through the correct methodologies. Now, the proper way to find a partner is through introductions. Whether that introduction be through your imam, or through your families, or through the networks. This is why the importance of a Muslim community is there. The importance of the Jamaat, the community, is vital. Because if you are a lone wolf, standing out from a Muslim community, and you don't have extended networks through the masjid, through the Islamic society, through your halaqas, whatever it may be, how are you going to find marriage partners? If you're already married, how are you going to find marriage partners for your children? Where are you going to look? We need to be involved. And I know I'm preaching to the converted because everybody already here, mashallah, is involved in the Islamic society and stuff like that. But these are the networks we need to build up. Our family networks as well. Our parents will know other families. And introductions will come this way. What happens next? If our parents, our walis, our imams, our elders, the matchmakers, whoever it may be, if they know suitable candidates, then introductions can be made. What do we mean by introductions can be made? Normally the good etiquette is to give a woman some information on a brother. If she's interested, then we can give a brother some information on a woman. Then if and only then both parties, bear in mind, are interested to marry, then inshallah a suitable meeting can take place, but not alone. We all know, when a man and woman are alone, who's the third? Shaitan. And what's the shaitan saying in your ear? Don't have to whisper it out loud, brothers. I tell you, I know what shaitan's saying in your ear. And we fall into khalwa too often, too easily. We have to be careful. We have to understand. Rasulullah is telling us an advice, a warning, that if a man and woman are alone in khalwa, seclusion, the third is shaitan. And the shaitan wants to come and get you to do stuff. So he whispers. So we never allow this kind of meeting to take place. There should always be, I don't like to use the word responsible adults, but there should be people there, chaperones there. And the conduct of how the people interact should be in accordance with the Quran and the Sunnah. And then, if a meeting is mutually acceptable, people are happy after meeting, if it's required, further meetings can take place. If it's required. But when I say if it's required, further meetings can take place, this is not an excuse for halal dating. You phone up each other, oh look, we'll bring Brother Asim along and we can go out to the cinema. He can sit in a row behind us. No. You can't do that. Halal dating, there is no such concept. It does not exist. You meet one another with chaperones in order to see if there is compatibility. If those qualities that we've already established are there in the other person, that we can actually start to think about marrying one another. And then inshallah, as soon as possible, we should never delay the nikah. Rasulullah said that when there is a delay in the nikah, the shayateen rejoice and the malaika are sad. And when there is a delay in a talaq, a divorce, the shayateen are sad and the malaika rejoice. So if we've established that this is the right partner for us, that this is the direction we're wanting to go, then inshallah we proceed. And we make the necessary arrangements and we get married. So what about getting married? The nikah. There is no formula for how a nikah should take place in terms of culturally. There are certain things that should not be present. And there are certain things that should be present. These are the conditions I will list to you now for a nikah to be valid. Number one, the primary condition for a nikah to be valid is consent. Consent on both parties. The boy concerned should wish to marry the girl, and the girl concerned should wish to marry the boy. I do a lot of dealings with forced marriage. And wallahi, brothers and sisters, the non-Muslims, all they hear about is forced marriage, forced marriage, forced marriage. Islam does not acknowledge such a concept as forced marriage. The concept does not exist. You cannot have a forced marriage. A forced marriage is zina. Because the first condition of nikah is consent. If you are not consenting to marry the person you are married and you then have sexual relations, you are committing zina. You have to consent. So consent is the primary condition of the nikah. The next condition of the nikah is mahar, a wedding gift for the woman that cannot be touched by the man. And understand this, brothers. The mahar must be given to the woman. There is a peculiar thing that takes place in certain cultures of the Indian subcontinent, where a man says, I will give a mahar of £100,000 and 50 acres of land in my village back home. And the family are like, wow. And then the night of the wedding, the father says to the son, ask your wife to forgive you the nikah, you're not giving it. And this happens. People aren't giving mahar because they're making inflated promises of mahar and unable to fulfill them. Mahar is a condition of nikah. The marriage gift to the woman is a condition of your nikah. If you do not fulfill even if it's deferred, you can have a nikah at the time, a mahar at the time of the nikah, and a deferred nikah, mahar. If it's deferred, fine, you still have to fulfill it. If you give it then, you must give it. You can't say, please forgive me, I didn't mean it really. I've only got 5 pence in my pocket. You can't do that. One brother, wallahi, he was ignorant, he didn't know. He came to me, he said, my father told me to give £75,000 mahar. So the woman agreed to marry me on this basis. I said, do you have £75,000? He said, wallahi, I don't even have £75. What should I do? I said, then you have to ask her consent to renegotiate the mahar, renew your contract based on the new mahar, renew the contract, bear in mind, based on the new mahar, which is £75. Why make an inflated promise? This is a woman's right. Why do we strip our women of the rights that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained for them? So mahar is the second condition of nikah. The third condition of nikah is witness. 2 witnesses must witness the nikah taking place. So it's known that this man and this woman are now married. So 2 people must witness this nikah taking place. And for the Jumhur, which is the Imam Shafi, Imam Malik and Imam Ahmed, the permission of the wali must be sought, must be given. The permission of the wali must be given in those 3 madhabs for a nikah to be valid. Imam Abu Hanifa, rahimahullah, he has a different opinion, and maybe that will come up in the question and answer, but I won't dwell on that at the moment. There's a fiqh issue at stake there. So these are the conditions of nikah. So once you found your partner, once you want to get married, these are the conditions of the nikah. Now, what happens in this day and age with nikah? Allah knows best, but I've been to some weddings, nikahs, and I can't even tell, is this a Hindu nikah or is this a Muslim nikah? Imagine, when we go to get our weddings ready, in fact, everything in our life, imagine when you're going to go and do something, would you do it with the Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam present with you? When people are going to arrange their weddings, and they're thinking of the clothes they're going to wear, and the venue they're going to hold, and the bands they're going to have, and the fanfares, and the mixing, and the free mixing, and everything else that takes place, would you still conduct your wedding in this manner with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam present to that wedding? If you wouldn't, then you shouldn't do it. If you wouldn't, then you should not do it. We should think about what it means to fulfill the sunnah. Don't think of the sunnah as just a physical manifestation. The sunnah is a way of life. So if you wouldn't do something with him present, we shouldn't do it at all. So in our marriage ceremonies, as long as we're fulfilling the conditions, the 4 criterion for a nikah to be valid, then on top of that, however you have your celebration of walima, then that's fine. As long as it's permissible. Because every culture, every tradition has differences. And there's no problem in that, as long as those cultural practices don't oppose the Quran and the Sunnah. Again, what do we find in this day and age? Walima is the celebration, the announcement of the nikah. Now, we often find the opposite. That everybody throws everything into this nikah, huge party with the nikah, and walima becomes insignificant. This is against the sunnah. The sunnah is that we have a walima, a celebration given by the man in order to announce and celebrate this union. Now we have situations where walimas are being ignored and people are just throwing gigantic nikahs and forget about the walima. We should go back to the sunnah. There's more blessing in reverting back to the sunnah and adopting the way of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, time is running out, so let's move on to, you've got married now, and how do we stay happily married? Once we've got the nikah, once we've chosen the right partner, once everything's in place, how do we stay happily married? What are the ingredients to make marriage successful? I can sum up the ingredients to make marriage successful in one word. The sunnah. One word. If we adopt the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Ummahat al-Mu'mineen in how we live our married lives, marriage will be successful. But what does that mean? First, we have a problem here. And this is a problem with our Muslim communities generally. Not just with marriage, but in terms of everything in our lives. We don't know the sunnah. We don't know the seerah. We don't have much knowledge of our own deen. So if people ask us, how was the Prophet with our wives? We probably don't know. How were the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen with the Rasul? We probably don't know. Because we don't have enough information. Because we don't seem to spend enough time learning our deen. We need to start going back to our deen. If we want success in this life, we need to start moving back towards the deen of al-Islam. If we only understood the sunnah, life would be very easy. Rasulullah taught us how to be good husbands. He gave us all the ingredients necessary for being good husbands. He told us, he is best amongst you who is best to his wives, and I am the best to my wives. So he treated the women best. He who is best amongst you is he who is best to his wives. Why? When we know the status of mother is so high, why did he mention wives? Anybody think? We don't question, we don't analyze enough of the statements of the Quran and the Hadith. Anybody knows that the mother, Jannah lies where? Mother's feet. Who deserves first right over you? So why did Rasulullah say best to his wives? Because every man is automatically, intrinsically good to his mother. Every man. But at the expense sometimes of his wives. And this is not permissible. Mothers have rights in Islam, but wives have rights in Islam. Children have rights in Islam, husbands have rights in Islam. Everybody has rights, and there is no conflict with these rights. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has made our deen perfect. There is no conflict between anybody's rights and responsibilities. They don't overlap and they don't conflict. So if we give our mothers due rights, we will be giving them the correct status. But if we give our wives due rights as well, we're not conflicting with our mothers, but we're giving them what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has ordained for them. So Rasulullah said, who is best amongst you is best to his wives, because a man is intrinsically, naturally driven towards being good to his blood, his mother, his father, his sisters. But because this bond of marriage is a brought together bond, it is not a blood bond, sometimes you have to work at it. Sometimes you have to have a bit of give and take. And the principle to use in marriage in Islam, which makes marriages successful, is a word called ithar. Ithar means to prefer the other over yourself. To prefer the other over yourself. Just think for a moment. If husbands were preferring the feelings and the desires and the wants of their wives above their own, and wives were preferring the feelings and the desires and the wants over their own, of their husbands over their own, look what happens. If both parties are exhibiting ithar, then both parties start doing for one another and pleasing one another and sacrificing for one another at their own expense. And this is what we find is the perfect way to make a harmonious marriage in Islam, is to base it on ithar, helping the other, preferring the other's wants and desires, within boundaries, of course. Rasulullah gave us advice on every aspect of marriage, every single aspect of marriage. He gave us advice even how to be tender, how to be gentle, how to be kind and considerate in the bedroom. People are shocked when you talk to non-Muslims and you talk about marriage in Islam. They can't believe that even advice how to be in the bedroom is given by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He taught us. He gave us etiquettes. He gave us understanding of how we should be. We should approach our wives with gentle words and tender kisses. This is what he taught us. Not like a bull in a china shop. This is what we should understand. Gentle words and tender kisses. He's teaching us how to be kind, how to be considerate, how to be nice towards our wives. He taught us how to be soft and kind even in the face of anger and argumentation. We all know the examples from the seerah. Aisha radiallahu anha, she had sometimes a temper, she had much jealousy. So we know that she used to, after many incidences we know of, where her temper would overflow and she would say something. If it was in a modern marriage, I'm paraphrasing the example, everybody knows the famous incident when on one of Aisha radiallahu anha's nights, a servant came to the door with food, and I believe it was from Salama, somebody can correct me if I was wrong. Salama had sent some food that Rasulullah liked. So she brought it to the door. Aisha radiallahu anha was so upset and jealous, she smashed the pot from the hand of the servant, and it smashed on the floor. Now, in a modern marriage, what would be the husband's reaction? This is what we see. What was the reaction of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, our guide? Two narrations which describe what he did. One narration says that he picked up the pieces of the pot, he gave some money, a dirham or a dinar, and to the servant and said, go and buy a replacement pot and tell Salama that the food was very nice. The other narration says that he bent down and he took some of the food from the floor and he ate it and then did the same thing and sent her back. No anger, no slap, no aggression, because he understood the nature of men and women. He was our guide. He spoke from above 7 heavens. He was sent as rahmatul lil alameen. He was sent to teach us how to live. So he knew that men and women have differences. And this is crucial. Understanding the differences between men and women. And we will come to that again in a moment, inshallah. He showed us how to be romantic. He showed us not to be shy of affection. How many of us have read a hadith where we see that Aisha radiallahu anha narrates that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had his head on my lap? Familiar with many narrations of this nature, where the wives of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam are mentioning that he was being affectionate to them. In Welsh, he say he was kutched up to them. He was showing affection. He was showing tenderness. He was showing kindness. These are lacking now because we're men. Men don't show affection. I ain't going to be affectionate. What do you want? This is not the sunnah. But we laugh. But think about this. If we're showing this in our marriages, if we're saying that real men don't act that way, real men don't show affection, real men don't put our heads on their laps, was Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam not a real man? Wallahi, a brother once phoned me and said, I can hear water in the background flowing. What's going on? I said, I'm washing some dishes. He said, are you gay? I said, why? He said, men don't wash dishes. I said, do you not know that Rasulullah used to help his family? Help them with the washing, help them preparing food, help them clearing up. Are you a better man than him? What could he say to that? The examples we take now for manhood are the wrong examples. In every aspect of our lives. Rasulullah told us that the real man, the stronger man, is not the one who can throw the other one to the floor, is the one who can walk away in the face of anger and aggression. How many of us implement this aspect of the sunnah? We find it very easy to grow a bit of hair on our chin and say sunnah. But can we really adopt the sunnah in our adab and akhlaq? This is what really counts. Can we really be like him? when it comes to our conduct with humanity. So Islam, Rasulullah, the Sunnah teaches us how to be affectionate, how to be gentle, how to be kind. Islam maintains a woman's integrity. She maintains her name. She maintains her individual status. She and only she has the right to accept or reject a proposal. She and only she has the right to accept or reject a proposal. If there's time, there's a very famous hadith reported by Imam Tirmidhi, and we'll look at this later on if there's time, inshallah. She has a right to maintain her name, right to maintain her property, right to be maintained in a manner that she is accustomed to. So if we start adopting how we're meant to be in marriage, according to the Sunnah, then we start seeing harmonious marriage taking place. Likewise for women, we see, and the best example for a woman was Khadija radiallahu anha. We see the honor and obedience, the commitment of Khadija radiallahu anha to Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was impeccable. These are the examples of how our women should be. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is the example of how the men should be in marriage. If we learn about the seerah, if we learn how to be in marriage according to them, then inshallah marriage can be successful. As time is running out, I just want to touch on problems in marriage, and then we'll open it up for questions and answers. So when we've seen that Islam legislates how marriage is meant to be conducted, how it's meant to be fulfilled, how it's meant to be brought about, how we're meant to maintain happiness in marriage, why do we see so many problems in marriage in Islam today? We see domestic abuse, we see oppression, we see forced marriage, we see all manner of filth taking place within Muslim marriages. Why? The problem is, number one, we don't understand what Islam wants from marriage. Number two, we don't understand what the Sunnah is in marriage. And we also have a third problem here. We know that we have an open enemy in marriage. In Surah Baqarah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reminds us that the shaitan and those who learn the magic from the shayateen, that they try to cause separation between a man and his wife. The shaitan is very, very happy when he causes this separation between husbands and wives. There is a narration that Iblis sits on his throne on the water, and all of his army, his junud of shaitan, the armies of shaitan are coming and reporting their day's work. And they're coming in, I said this, and one said I done that, and one said this and that, and he's not interested. Then the shaitan comes, and he says, I came between husband and wife. I caused fitna between husband and wife. He sits up, and he says, this is what I'm happy with. Why is the shaitan so adamant to break up marriages? Because when you break down marriages, a few things occur. Number one, the foundation of the Islamic society is broken. The foundation of our Islamic society is broken with the breakdown of marriage. Number two, if it doesn't even break down, what happens? If a man, his head is full of trials and tribulations from going home, he can't face going home, oh, she's going to do my head in again, I'm going to get all this, I'm going to get all that. Can he fulfill his job? And by his job, I don't mean earning money, I mean spreading the deen of al-Islam. Can he be a successful da'i if in his home life things are turbulent? Can he go out for the sake of Allah, struggling in the sake of Allah, if his home life is turbulent? This is a fitna in his home. The home should be a place of tranquility. If the comfort isn't there, then his whole life becomes difficult. Likewise for a woman, if there are difficulties in her home life, then how can she fulfill her obligations to her children, her obligations to her husband, her obligations to the household and the family? How can she fulfill them if she has difficulties? If the man walks through the door and she can't stand the sight of him because there's fitna between them, how can she be obedient? How can she be comforting to him? We have to understand shaitan wants this to break down so that we don't fulfill our obligations. People even leave their salah. People even leave their salah when it comes to trials and tribulations in marriage. Ever wonder why? The ayah of Quran which says Hafidhu ala salawat wa salat al-wusta, it comes between a series of ayat describing divorce. Because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows us better than we know ourselves. And He knows that at times of divorce, even we may move away from the salah because the fitna on our head is too much. So Allah legislates, Hafidhu ala salawat, guard your prayers, especially the middle prayer. And He legislates this in a group of ayat dealing with divorce. Because at these times of difficulty, men, women start moving away from Allah, start moving and drifting away from the deen. So this is why shaitan is very, very happy. So we have an open enemy in marriage. We also have enemies from within our communities, because there is pressure to be certain ways. If we understood the sunnah, our rationale for marrying and the way in which we conduct our marriage should be according to the sunnah. If we stick to that, then inshallah these fitnas shouldn't occur. I'm going to finish on one point and then open it up for questions, because we have very limited time. I mentioned a moment ago lack of understanding of how men and women are. Lack of understanding. We don't understand that men and women are different. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made us different. He made us biologically different. He made us chemically different. He made us psychologically different. And yet, men expect women to act like men, and women expect men to act like women. We have to understand that Rasulullah gave a hadith, which very often men used to hit their wives with. He said, the women are deficient in aql and deen. Now before we have sisters start throwing stones at me, let me explain this. These are not my words. The words of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Women are deficient in aql and deen. What do we understand by aql? Somebody shout out a word. Intellect. Everybody understands intellect. The word is much deeper than intellect. We have, mashallah, some Arab brothers with us who will explain that aql is deeper than just intellect. Some of the scholars of Arabic language describe aql as being an ability to break the emotions. Agreed? Jazakallah khair. I know this brother speaks Arabic, so I'm looking at him. An ability to break on the emotions. The aql is derived from the same word as igal. Igal is what you see Arabs sometimes wearing on their head. Now they wear it nice and fancy, but it used to be worn as an implementive tool. It was used to tie a camel's knee. Why? Because if you tie the camel's knee, it can't wander off. So aql is an ability to break on emotions. Allah has made women less able to break their emotions than men. Why? It's not sexist. It's not derogatory to women in any way, shape or form. In fact, it shows how beautiful Allah made our different natures. If women were logical like men and had the same thought process, and this is what even Western psychologists agree, women and men have different thought processes. If a woman was purely logical and purely thinking on logic and fact and calculations with no emotions involved, when a baby is crying at 4 o'clock in the morning and screaming, if she was like a man, she'd throw the baby out the window. I hadn't slept for 4 days, do my head in, go. But, alhamdulillah, we don't find many babies on the street. Because women are deficient in aql. So Allah gave them an emotional, nurturing nature. So, when the baby cries, even if the woman is tired, if she hasn't slept for 5 days, even if she's got bags under her eyes and she can't stand up, she picks up the baby and she rocks it and she gives it some milk. Because she's deficient in aql. Because Allah gave her an emotional nature to nurture, to go through the pangs of childbirth, to be able to look after her children, to be able to care for the family, at her own expense very often. Likewise men. If men were too emotional, when he goes to leave the house in the morning, where he has to go to provide, one of the rights of the woman is to be provided for, to provide for his family. When he goes to do that, and he sees his beautiful wife's face, and his children's faces smiling and crying because they don't want him to leave, if he had too much emotion and not enough aql, he would say, forget work, I'm just going to stay home and play with my family. So Allah knows best. He gave us different natures for a reason. He created us. So why women shouldn't take this as a derogatory statement. It is a statement of Allah, of Rasulullah acknowledging that we have differences. When we understand these differences, life becomes harmonious. And I conclude with one story to give you an example of understanding differences as men and women. In the time of Umar ibn Khattab radiallahu anhu, a man was wanting to complain to Amir al-Mu'mineen that his wife was giving him all the verbals in the house. The narration doesn't say verbals, but we all understand what we mean. He was giving him all the earache, constantly nagging, having a go at him, doing his head in. So he went to complain to Umar al-Khattab. So he arrives at the door of Umar's house, the Khalifa, Amir al-Mu'mineen, and what does he find? He hears Umar's wife doing the same thing. So he goes to leave. Amir al-Mu'mineen comes to him and says, where are you going? He said, I came to seek nasiha from you, but it's okay. He said, why? I'm paraphrasing. He said, why? He said, because I was going to come and complain to you about my wife because she was doing my head in, but I see yours is doing the same. So it's no problem. He said, listen, she cooks for me. She cleans for me. She brings up my children. She bore my children and brings them up. She cares for me. Can I not then tolerate a little bit of argumentation? And this is understanding the difference in nature between men and women. Because men should understand the women have a different nature. They think differently. They are more emotional, and we should acknowledge. Just as Rasulullah acknowledged with Aisha radiallahu anha, acknowledge that she had more emotional nature. They don't chastise, they accept that this is the nature that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given to men and women. Likewise, women have to understand that men don't always think like women. Very often, women come and one of the complaints will be, well, he never does this for me, he never does that for me, he never buys me flowers, he never looks after me. And the man will often say, you never told me to. And she'll say, you should know. You should just know anyway. How can he know? Remember, sisters, men are thinking on a very logical thought process. They don't know. They can't read the wind and see that you want flowers. If you want flowers, you have to drop them a subtle hint, send them a text or tell them. They don't know. This is because men are given a nature. There is so much aql, there is so much logical thought process that they don't know. Unless somebody presents to them flowers are needed, they don't know flowers are needed. Likewise, women have that emotional nature. So if we start understanding the differences between men and women, then inshallah we can move towards harmonious marriages. Inshallah, I'm going to conclude there because the time is running out, and I will open it up for question and answers. If I've said anything to upset or offend anyone, please forgive me. All the good that I have said, inshallah, comes from Allah, and all the mistakes are from myself. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم فاستغفروا إنه هو الغفور الرحيم.
If anyone has any questions, please raise your hands, inshallah. Or if you prefer, write them down on a piece of paper and pass them forward.
Okay.
Sorry? Yeah, I know.
Okay, we'll give everybody a moment to breathe before we get into question and answer. Okay. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulil Kareem. Amma ba'd. I'm presuming this has come from a brother. The brother is asking, how do I control myself if I can't get married anytime soon? This is we laugh, but it's a very common question. And it's something we should understand. This is why one of the Sahaba once said that there is nothing that we need to know that we were not taught by Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Even the birds that fly in the sky. The Sahaba mentions even the birds that fly in the sky. So everything we need to know, we will find the answer in the Quran and the Sunnah. And by extension in the Sharia. Rasulullah has addressed this. That if you find that you can't, in inverted commas, control yourself, and you're not in a position to marry, the advice from the Prophet ﷺ is to fast. Now, he gave that as an advice. And anyone who's tried it knows that it works. Now let me give you a little bit of science. Any biologists in the room? One. Okay, inshallah. Postgrad? Undergrad? First year. Okay, maybe you haven't got to this yet. Any doctors in the room? No? Okay, I'll tell you anyway. One doctor. It has now been found by medical science that there are certain centers within the brain. There are higher centers and lower centers. And correct me, doctor, if I'm wrong. Higher centers and lower centers. And if you cut off the desires to a higher center, the lower centers below it are stamped out. What do I mean by this? The center for sexual desire is lower than the center for the need for food and drink. So, when you are fasting, you are unable to get sexually aroused because the higher center is taken over. The need for food and water preempts the need for sexual fulfillment. So when the Prophet ﷺ said for those who are unable to marry, they should fast, he's giving us a wisdom. 1400 years before medical science was able to catch up with the wisdom that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him. That he's teaching us something which only now science is able to show. That fasting is the way to control your desires in the face of uncontrollability. As Zakir Naik says, I hope that answers your question. Again, a brother must have asked this. When you say choosing between deen and beauty, can't a brother look for both? Of course, Rasulullah said that there are 4 criteria for which we choose marriage partners. But he stipulated that if you don't choose the women of piety, of taqwa, then you will be a loser. That woman of taqwa, as I mentioned to you, the beauty will come from her taqwa. Yes, there is nothing wrong in looking for the most beautiful woman that you can find, but do not be so shallow to just look for beauty. If you see taqwa, a woman of taqwa, whatever she looks like, a woman of taqwa is intrinsically beautiful. Because Allah puts something in her to make her beautiful to you. So that taqwa will shine through as beauty. If you just look for beauty, the beauty will fade after 3 to 6 months. Genuinely. I'm being serious with you. All the research proves that 3 to 6 months is as long as that visual beauty will lead. The inner beauty of taqwa will continue and continue and continue. But yes, of course, there's nothing wrong in, if first criterion is looking for taqwa, then there's nothing wrong in also seeking a woman of taqwa who is appealing to you. We don't say beauty because even in English we say beauty is in the eye of the beholder. We all know the story of Julaybib. And Julaybib was an ugly man within the companions. But what happened? He became the most pleasing husband to his wife because of his inner beauty. So it works both ways. That what you may not find beautiful to begin with, the taqwa and the iman and the piety will shine through and that will become beautiful. But of course there is nothing wrong in seeking what is appealing to you. And I say to you, because everybody will find somebody beautiful. Who knows, maybe there's somebody out there that finds me beautiful. Allah knows best. Okay, this is a very good question. How close and open can people be during how close and open can people get during the get to know each other period? The get to know each other period is not a get to know each other period as such. It is a get to find out if this is the person you want to marry period. There's a big difference. Get to know period means, 6 months later you know each other's shoe size, you know each other's favourite colour, you know each other's likes and dislikes, and you get married and you know it already. It's a get to know if you want to marry this person period. That's what it is. So how close and open can they be? They should remain fairly closed. Fairly closed in that there are certain questions you will need to ask. Certain personality traits you will need to find out. But to get into intimate details is not permissible. Because let's say, for example, you start getting intimate details. And by intimate details, I mean personal, really personal stuff about a brother or a sister. And then you decide you don't want to marry. And that sister starts marrying your best friend. Then you know intimate details of her. This is not right. It should maintain a level of formality in order that you can find what's appropriate within your marriage. And don't go any deeper than that. There are instances where brothers and sisters really get to know each other. Outside of meetings, they're texting all night, MSN, chat book, Facebook, whatever, all night, finding out about one another. This is not right. Because now we're getting too much intimacy. That intimacy should only come after nikah. Once the nikah has been concluded, SubhanAllah, look at these questions. Once the nikah has been concluded, okay, I think we're going to be praying Fajr here, it looks like. After the nikah has been concluded, that's when the real intimacy should come. I'll try and move through these a bit quickly because there's a mountain here. In our culture, our weddings are mixed. If our parents are okay with this, how do we disagree with them without disobeying them? Okay, even the concept of what is mixed and not mixed should be understood. There is no free mixing in Islam. What do we mean by free mixing? Where brothers and sisters are laughing and joking and checking each other out in open circumstances, this is not permissible in Islam. But at the same time, even weddings where they are in inverted commas segregated, what that normally means is you put a barrier up, the women remove the hijab, and they scream 5 minutes later because some uncle has come to see his wife. It's very difficult in the situations, in the halls, in the controlled environments we have in this country to have really properly separated or segregated marriages. The best way is to make it known that this is not hijab-free zone, okay? That there should be separation of the tables for men and women in as best as we can. If parents aren't understanding it, then we have a responsibility. Rasulullah ﷺ said, "Ad-din nasiha." The deen is sincere advice. To who? To Allah, to His book, to the messengers, to the leaders of the Muslims, and to the generality. So we should give nasiha in the most beautiful way. And I stress this, in the most beautiful way. Bringing our argument from the Quran and the Sunnah as to why our wedding should be conducted according to the Sunnah. Now, beautiful way means this. It doesn't mean this. Oh, what do you know, Mum, Dad? You ain't got no knowledge of the deen. I'm a sheikh. This is how people talk now. Somebody answer me. How was Musa alayhi salam asked to speak to Fir'aun? A gentle word. Speak to him a gentle word. Perhaps he may receive admonition. If Fir'aun deserved a gentle word from Musa alayhi salam, one of the 5 great mighty messengers, and Fir'aun, the greatest zalim to walk the face of the earth, if he deserved a gentle word from Musa, what about our own parents who are believers? We should, if we're giving nasiha to our family and our folk, it must be done in the most beautiful way, the kindest, the most respectful, the softest way. This is how we address our parents. And it should be done in a way which causes them no offense and makes them content with what we're bringing to them. So if our parents are in that situation because of cultural understandings, then we try and address this in the most beautiful way with basis of the Quran and the Sunnah, and that you want to marry in the way that pleases Allah, and you think that this is most pleasing to Allah, and you can do it in a wonderful way. But please, brothers and sisters, don't ever think that when you give nasiha to your parents, especially to your parents above anyone else, that you have any right to be rude or raise your voice or even bark at them. None of this is permissible. It must be in the most beautiful way. What is the concept of spying to look for a sister in Islam? I'm going to be really honest. I'm not one of these people that will make something up if I don't know. I'll be honest, I don't know. I've never heard of spying in Islam. As the brother mentioned, I deal with extremism. I don't promote it, I prevent it. So spying to me means something completely different. So I don't know this concept of spy. If by spying we mean checking out sisters when they're not looking, then I don't know what it means. So forgive me, brother.
There's another question where it says a hadith of a Sahabi who, when he was told about by the Prophet about a potential wife, he went and looked behind a tree. Actions, it says here.
Okay, I think I understand. Okay, what we mean by spying is to, as the brother mentioned in the hadith, about looking from behind a tree to take a glance at the person we're looking at. Spying in the instance of looking to see what the person may look like in order to marry, as what normally appears, is permissible. You're walking in the street, you're watching TV. Our sisters, mashallah, are covered. So if the sister is covered and she's walking in the street and you happen to be pointed out who she is and you take a look for the purpose that you're considering marriage, and I mean take a look, not one of these. No. But you take a look to get a glimpse of what the person is like, what normally appears, this is permissible. In fact, and this is something to understand, if you are really, truly, seriously considering somebody to marry, it is in that instance even permissible, according to Rasulullah, that you may even have a glimpse of the hair. The woman may remove the khimar just for a moment to give you a glimpse of what the hair is. But that only comes at the stage when you are genuinely interested, that you wish to marry this person. Then Rasulullah permitted a glimpse under the khimar. That's it. There are some crazy opinions going around about what that means now, and none of them are authentic from within the Sunnah, so we reject them. How can one overcome the cultural barrier when one's parents want a man from the same culture for the woman? Okay. Very, very common problem and rife within our Muslim communities. We have to first of all understand what our parents want for us. Our parents want what is best. The parents are not our enemies. The parents bore us, provided for us, brought us up, and want what's best for us. So from their understanding and their wisdom, they feel that perhaps marrying somebody from the same culture will be more appropriate because they understand the culture that they were brought up in. Now, what does Islam say about this? Islam doesn't differentiate on culture. we have no cultural boundaries as such within Islam. And especially for those living in the West, what you tend to find is that you may be one person from Somalia and one person from Bosnia, but they're both British Muslims, may have more in common with one another living as British Muslims than if they were to bring somebody from back home. This is just my humble opinion. So what we see as culture may often be that the culture we live in is more appropriate. The culture that we're living in, meaning British Muslim society. When one's parents want a man from the same culture for the woman, then ultimately you have the right to refuse a unsuitable candidate. Unless, and I say this unless, what Rasulullah stipulated is if a man comes to you with his deen and akhlaq and tact, if you feel that somebody from back home will have no understanding of how you live in this day and age as a British Muslim, then that is a genuine enough reason to reject a candidate because you're living in a different community, a different society. And the rationale for the woman having the right to say no, Imam Tirmidhi collected a hadith where the Rasulullah was, and I'll paraphrase the story because of time limitations. A woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and she said that my father is marrying me to a man and I haven't given my consent and I'm not approving of it. What did you say to this? The Prophet ﷺ said, it's finished, it's not happening, it's non-existent. She then turns around and says, well actually, I'm happy with my father's choice, but I wanted the women to know that the fathers have no say in this. So what she's doing, she actually liked the man. The man her father was saying she liked him, but she wanted women to know that the right to refuse ultimately lies with the woman. So the woman has the right, she has to spend her life with this person. If she's content with his deen and akhlaq, then let's go for it. If she's not, then she has the right to refuse. There is no concept of forced marriage in Islam. So sisters, again, using beautiful nasiha, we should approach our parents and explain in the most beautiful and wonderful way how we have been given rights by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and we should stick to them. Would you advise a person to get married who is studying and can't financially support a wife? This is a general question which unfortunately, if the person wants to talk to me afterwards individually, certain questions should be addressed upon your individual circumstances. If I turn around now and I say, yes, while you're studying, go and get a wife and you can't support it, I'd never do that. Because I know people in this audience who might go out and get married and they can't do anything that they need to. But you may be in a position, whoever asked that question, where you could fulfill the conditions required for you to get married. So we can't give a general statement on this. I would prefer, my number may be available afterwards, you can contact me, and your individual circumstance may be appropriate, so we'd look at that individually. But you can't give a blanket yes or a blanket no. So sorry I refuse to answer that one, other than ask me personally afterwards. Okay. Okay, somebody's asking, finding people just through introductions. If your parents cannot be your walis due to religious differences, what does one do if they don't agree with the marriage? Okay, in this instance I'm presuming the person's parents may be non-Muslim. If that's the instance, then a woman's wali, if she has a non-Muslim family member, a brother or a father as her guardian, then her wali in terms of marriage should be a Muslim. Because obviously we're looking at the first criterion for somebody's deen. So a non-Muslim parent wouldn't be in a position to be able to fulfill that obligation on her. Therefore, the correct thing to do for a sister in that position is to appoint a wali from within the community. An imam or a trusted elder, somebody who they respect and know will look out for them. And if she really doesn't have Muslim family to do that for her, then the imam can represent her as her wali in this instance. How can one know the character of a brother? Fact, there are brothers who appear of good character but turn out otherwise. This is very true. There's no denying that. This is why one of the things I didn't touch upon is the importance of doing istikhara. Rasulullah gave us advice about doing salat al-istikhara, the dua of guidance. So when we are looking for potential marriage partners, we should be performing istikhara regularly, seeking Allah's guidance. And if we understood what istikhara really is, First and foremost, let's look at the concept of dua. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, "Udu'uni astajib lakum," call out to me and I will respond. So we know that when we make sincere dua to Allah, He is responding. If we're making dua of istikhara and we're asking Allah that if this is good for me, then ordain it for me. If it's good for me for my deen, dunya and akhirah, then ordain it for me and facilitate it for me. And if it's bad for me, then distance me from it and distance me from it and make me happy with with whatever else. If we start relying on seeking guidance from Allah and something comes to happen, then inshallah we should trust that what Allah is guiding us to is correct. Now, in terms of istikhara, don't expect, as many people do, that I prayed istikhara and I didn't have a dream. Istikhara is not just about having dreams or feelings. It's about, look at the wording, ordain it for me and facilitate it for me. Events will take place towards an occurrence if it's good, and events will take place away from an occurrence if it's bad. So put reliance on Allah. Truly, in an introduction, you can't really know a person's character. You won't really know the depth of a character until you marry them. Which is why you rely first and foremost on istikhara for Allah to guide you to it. And secondly, references from people who know these people. This is why it's so important to be part of an Islamic community. So important to be part of a Jamaat that people actually know one another. Because people can tell you about one another if they are good character. There are many good brothers in this audience who are very well known to me. And I would vouch for them, for their references, because I know them intimately. And likewise, this should be the condition within our communities. Is it advisable to disclose one's history for which he or she has repented to Allah and asked His forgiveness to a potential suitor? Generally speaking, no. Generally speaking. And I say generally speaking, there are specifics in this. Generally speaking, we know that Rasulullah said that we should cast a veil over our sins. Don't expose what Allah has covered for us. So we shouldn't go exposing our sins, especially if you've made tawbah for something. However, and why I say however, in issues of marriage, it is permissible when you're investigating somebody's character for marriage, it's permissible for the person you're investigating with to tell everything about the person. Because it's one of the occasions you're permitted, and it's not called backbiting, you're giving information about potential marriage candidate, it's permissible to tell everything. If you fear that perhaps your past may come out through other people, then it may be wise to explain that this may have happened in your past, and perhaps and you've made tawbah and Allah has forgiven, if you fear that it may get exposed. If it's not something known to the generality, then if Allah has concealed it for you, maintain its concealment. What would be the Islamic way to deal with a situation where a brother wants to pursue a marriage proposal and so does the sister, but either of them don't know how to approach the topic of marriage as they are not sure how the other will respond? Should this be done through friends, family or directly? Definitely not directly. Okay? Because the directly falls into that criterion where you're approaching one another and there may be issues of khalwa and seclusion and unnecessary intimacy. If a brother has a potential sister in mind, and perhaps the sister also has the same brother in mind, then it should be done through, first and foremost, family connections. This is the most correct method, is to go through family connections. If family connections aren't there, then you appoint some mediators, some mutually known respectable friends, to come approach the other person's family. Remember, when you're approaching for a sister's hand for a proposal, it's done through her wali. It should be done through her father or her brother or her uncle, whoever is acting as her wali. If she has no direct wali, then through the imam. It should be done through the correct channels. So no approaches shouldn't really be made directly, because these often cause fitna and tribulation. It is better to go through the correct channels, first and foremost through family and then through respectable mutual friends. What advice would you give sisters who wish to have demanding careers and get married? Okay, there's 3 questions here. I'll address the first one first. What advice would you give to the sisters who wish to have demanding careers and get married? Islam doesn't forbid a woman from working. However, and I say however, Islam encourages that we fulfill our due roles and responsibilities. If a woman is married, her first role and responsibility is towards her husband and her family, her children and her household. This is her first role and responsibility. If on top of fulfilling those requirements and duties that Allah has legislated for us, if she finds she has the capacity and wishes to pursue her work, and her husband is content with her to do so, I say this again, and her husband is content for her to do so, then it is permissible for her to work in an environment that is Islamically acceptable. And this is the criterion. Her husband must approve, and the environment in which she's working must be Islamically permissible. If she reaches that situation, then inshallah, then she can continue working. However, very often we find that one of the causes of disharmony in marriages is where, because of the demands of hard-working careers, and you mentioned demanding careers, the women aren't able to fulfill their primary obligations. And I'll ask you a question. The 4 greatest women who ever lived were who? Maryam. Who else? Khadija. Who else? Fatima and Asya. What were these 4 women great for? Very often when we go to lectures about Khadija radiallahu anha, everybody first says she was a great businesswoman. She was a great businesswoman. Is that why she was one of the greatest women who ever lived? No. All these women were great for their devotion and support to messengers and khalifas. Asya radiallahu anha brought up Musa alayhi salam in her household. Fatima radiallahu anha was the daughter of Rasulullah and the husband of the Khalifa Ali radiallahu anhu. Maryam salam alayha brought up her son Isa alayhi salam in her household. And Khadija radiallahu anha was the wife of Rasulullah and her supporter. Their greatness came from the support of their men. In English we say behind every great man is a great woman. And wallahi, Islam establishes this. If we see the examples, if we read the history of our great pious predecessors, if we see the example of the 4 great imams, read their history, find what their mothers were like, because their devotion to their sons is what made them great. Likewise, the 4 greatest women, their devotion to their men is what made them great. So if a woman is able to fulfill these obligations and still hold down a career, then there is nothing wrong with it, provided the environment is acceptable and a husband gives permission. Should women go ask men or propose to them? There is nothing in Islam which forbids a woman from pursuing a proposal. How do we know this? Because we know Khadija radiallahu anha, she actually sent a proposal to the Prophet ﷺ. But look how she did it. The example of how Khadija radiallahu anha approached the Prophet ﷺ was not directly. She took one of her friends, her trusted friends, and through the mutual friend, the trusted friend, she asked the Prophet ﷺ. And look at the manner in which she asked him. She didn't say, Khadija wants to marry you. She said, "Oh Muhammad, ﷺ, why are you not married yet?" He said, "I'm a poor man, who would marry me?" She said, "Maybe Khadija would marry you." He said, "Really?" He said, "I'll go back and ask." So the friend took this proposal to the Prophet in such a beautiful way that maintained the honor of Khadija radiallahu anha. So women, if you're going to make proposals to men, do it in such a way that your honor and integrity is maintained in the same manner that Khadija radiallahu anha did it. And then it is permissible for a woman to seek a proposal from a man. How do you explain to parents the desire to get married at a fairly young age when the parents are only accustomed to people getting married at a later stage in life or after uni or work? Again, this would be a whole lecture in itself. I'll try and give you a very brief synopsis answer. Basically, one of the problems we face now is that we don't understand human beings' needs. Our parents sometimes, because of and it's not their fault, we have to understand our parents are brought up with all you don't know what you don't know, they say in English. So if they don't know something, we should never blame them. We should always be kind and understanding to the situations our families and our parents are in as well. But the physical desires of a young man or a young woman are just as important to them as their desire for food and drink, etc., etc. So if a person who is young is finding themselves in that position and they're able to get married, we should explain in the most wonderful way that perhaps it is time to get married. You can do this with beautiful talk and understanding. Maybe bring them a lecture on marriage. Maybe bring them to see a sheikh. Maybe sit them down. There's so many ways of approaching it. If somebody wants to talk to me afterwards or take my number, I can explain a whole raft of methods you can use. But we should explain it so that they understand our needs as well. Because nowadays what's happened, we've started looking at life as this. 16, GCSEs. 18, A-levels. 23, degree. 27, whatever, PhD. Then we get married. There is no formula for getting married. It's when the person feels ready, when the person, in the man's case, if he can't control his desires, he's physically able to, he should marry. Likewise, women have needs and desires too. So there's nothing wrong in pursuing marriage when it's appropriate. So every case has to be looked at individually. As I say, my number will probably be available afterwards, so you can speak to me directly. Is it permissible to have a walima with men and women in the same room if separated? Of course, we're sitting in the same room now. We have a level of separation. We're living in a society where you can't completely separate. So a walima is permissible as long as there is separation and there's no possibility of intermingling. See, the problem is not the physical barrier, because even physical barriers can be overcome. The problem is the adab and akhlaq of how men and women interact. If we're in the same room, then our sisters will be appropriately dressed, appropriately conducting themselves. Our brothers will be appropriately dressed and appropriately conducting themselves, and the mixing shouldn't take place. This is the unfortunate situation we find in this society, so we have to make do with it. It is permissible, of course, because we're all sitting in a room together now, and we're sitting in restaurants and lecture theatres and workplaces where there is a level of mixing. I don't say free mixing, but a level of mixing. So we should understand that in the situation of walima, obviously the halls don't always facilitate it. So if we have to have the same place, separation, as long as correct adab and akhlaq is being observed, then it is permissible. Can you clarify the Islamic opinion towards free mixing? It is not permitted. Free mixing is not permitted. Free mixing means unnecessarily chatting beyond what is needed. Obviously, if you're studying with someone, if you're working with someone, there will be a level of interaction. If you're conducting da'wah within the field of Islamic society, there will be a level of interaction. It's when that interaction goes past the point of what's needed, and it becomes idle chit-chat, laughing, joking, in inverted commas, flirting. This is when it becomes impermissible. To what extent do you rely on istikhara for guidance regarding a marriage proposal? Also, when is the best time to do istikhara, before you meet him or after? Istikhara should be used throughout our lives. Wallahi, this is something that we undervalue in this day and age. Istikhara should be done for every decision we have to make in life. For Allah to facilitate something for us, to ordain something for us. So, to what extent do you rely on istikhara? If you really have tawakkul, what do? You tie your camel and you trust in Allah. Doing istikhara is trusting in Allah to guide you. But tying your camel is making correct investigations. So you rely on your istikhara. If everybody's coming to you and saying he's an axe murderer, and he's just raped somebody down the road, and he drinks and he takes crack cocaine, but you had a dream that, whoa, you were walking down the sand with him and hand in hand, this is just stupid now. Okay? Now this is your nafs taking over. So your istikhara should be genuine guidance. If you're praying istikhara and people are coming to you and saying he's a bad character, then this is the answer to your istikhara. Allah is guiding you through the people. Allah isn't going to give you wahi necessarily. Allah is going to guide you through creation very often to what is right and wrong. So rely on your istikhara after tying your camel and doing correct investigations. When is the best time to do istikhara? Before you meet him or after? Throughout. When you intend to get married, do istikhara for marriage straight away. Even if there's nobody on the horizon, do istikhara for Allah to provide you with the correct person. Then if somebody comes along, do istikhara for that. Then after you've met them, do istikhara. It's not something that you have to do just once. Continually keep doing istikhara. You get the reward of the dua, you get the reward of the 2 rak'ah nafil you're praying. We should rely more heavily in implementing these acts more and more in our life. What if a brother finds it hard to find a wife because of a disability? We should also understand something here. The qadr of Allah. If Allah has written for our brother, if he has a disability or not, a marriage, inshallah Allah will ordain it for him. So pursuing a marriage, a disability shouldn't be an obstacle. As I mentioned the story of Julaybi, one of the companions, he was quite badly disabled. He was deformed even, in fact. He was very ugly, very short in stature. He was never likely to get a wife. But Rasulullah recommended him to marry the Sahabiya, and she was the happiest woman afterwards because she married Julaybib, and in fact he died a shaheed. So, even if you have a disability, don't think that this is the end of the story. Allah, if He has ordained somebody for you, you keep pursuing the correct proposals, and if inshallah, if Allah has somebody in mind for you, He will bring that to pass. They say when you marry somebody, you marry the family too. What must a brother or sister do if one family disagrees for the nikah to take place? That would very much depend on which family is disagreeing. It is not wise to marry against a family's wishes because it causes disharmony. If it's the woman's case, then as I mentioned, the opinion of Malik, Shafi and Ahmed is that there is no nikah without a wali, so she can't really pursue that. If you're following the Hanafi madhab, then there is a room for maneuver, which we won't go into right now. But generally speaking, if a family is disagreeing for the nikah to take place, as I say, if it's the woman's family, then in those three madhabs it will not take place. From the man's side, the man doesn't need anybody's permission under Sharia to marry. I'll repeat that again. The man, as an independent, fully grown man, does not need anybody's permission to marry. He can marry independently. However, there is not much wisdom in marrying without your family's support, so support should be sought. And again, I go back to what I mentioned before, addressing people in the most beautiful way, showing the good character of the person that you wish to marry. If they have a genuine objection based on deen, this should always be observed. If a parent finds the deen or the character of the person intended to marry to be disreputable, that's a genuine reason to refuse a marriage. If it's because they're from the wrong village or something like that, then a method or means could be sought to show the beauty in the person. If it's genuinely the right person, we can find methods and ways of overcoming that. If a sister returns the mahar, then the brother and sister have a divorce. Does the sister have the right to ask for the mahar back? If the sister returns the mahar because she's given it back as a gift, then no. Once the mahar is hers and is her right to keep. If she voluntarily, and look at this, if it's voluntarily returns it of her own accord as a gift, because then the mahar return is just a gift to her husband. If she gifts that money back, then it's a gift, and it then becomes his property, and she's given up her gift of mahar, then no, there is no right to return. This is why, sisters, really, when you get your mahar, you should maintain it for yourselves, because it has a purpose and a wisdom behind it. Last one? Okay. To what degree does the wife has to be obedient to the husband? Obedience to the husband is compulsory on a woman up until the point where it involves disobedience to Allah. Now, there's a point of issue here. The husband also, if he wishes to be obeyed, should be kind, considerate, and adopting the sunnah of Rasulullah is the easiest way to get obedience. However, the obedience of a woman to her husband is still obligatory, even if he is treating her very badly. What I give in individual cases is that if the woman is being treated badly, obedience to him is still required and he will be punishable. So men, if you listen to the khutbah of nikah, what is the word you often hear repeated? Ittaqallah, 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 fear Allah, fear Allah, fear Allah. Because if men don't fear Allah in their marriages, they will oppress women. If you fear Allah, you won't be oppressive to women. And it makes it easy for their obedience. However, obedience is only to the extent at which it means not disobeying Allah. If the man says, I want you to wear a miniskirt and take your hijab off, you disobey your husband. Because this would require disobeying Allah to obey your husband. This is not permissible. But obedience to the husband in most matters is compulsory. But the husband should also understand he needs to take shura. What is shura? Mutual consultation. If there's decisions to be made, just as the Prophet ﷺ did, if there were decisions to be made, he would take shura, mutual consultation with the companions, with his wives. Men should be doing the same thing. So the woman has her input, and there may be wisdom in what she says. A very famous incident we know when, again, it was Salama, at the time when they were refused entry into Makkah to perform the Umrah. These companions were refusing to take off the ihram because they really wanted to go for the Umrah. So Salama it was that suggested, why don't you shave your head and go out, and then they will have to follow you and realize that the ihram is broken. So the Prophet took this advice. Nowadays men refuse to take the women's advice. So they should be taking shura, consultation, looking for avenues where they can consult and take their opinion. But women still should obey their husbands in that which doesn't displease Allah. But again, there are a huge raft of issues involved in this. And again, I would prefer that somebody who has an issue on that actually come and see me personally, because there are so many incidences we deal with. There are issues where a man is refusing to let his wife seek knowledge, yet he himself is going to the pub. Does a woman then, sit at home because he refuses her to go to the halaqah and the dars of Quran while he goes to the pub? See, there are issues which need to be looked at on an individual basis, so I prefer to address them individually.
Just one last thing, would you recommend any books?
Last and final question, because I've totally run out of steam. Would you recommend any books on the topic of marriage guiding to the direct sources of the Sunnah? I would recommend one book which is nothing to do with Islam, but ironically, the author has picked out the Islamic methodology of differences between husbands and wives. Read this book and understand that it's not written by a Muslim, but take from it the understanding that Islam is teaching us. Men are from Mars and women are from Venus. Anyone heard of it? It's now translated in Arabic. The ulama in the Arab countries recommend it as well. Why? Because it has wisdom. It teaches us the differences between men and women. This is how we understand the differences between men and women. But this is not a direct source from the Sunnah. It happens to be that John Gray, who authored the book, has ironically written a book which is perfectly in line with the fitrah of men and women based on Islam. In terms of direct sources to the Sunnah, learn the seerah. Really, learn the seerah. Understand the life of the Prophet ﷺ with his wives, and that is the best source of finding how to be a good husband or a good wife.
Okay, Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for that beautiful talk. Hopefully we'll learn from it and leave with greater taqwa and a more closer to